Thanks. All right, so we're going to talk about Experience Builder today. Mark and Krithka are on board listening and watching the Q&A in the Whova web app or not the web app, the app, mobile app, whatever. So they'll try to answer questions as they can, and if we have time, we'll answer questions at the end. And as I mentioned in the previous session, if you're there, if we don't get to your question, those questions persist in the Whova environment, so we'll try to answer them after the session. Okay, so here we go. What is Experience Builder? Okay, so Experience Builder is a tool that empowers you to transform your data into some sort of immersive or compelling web app and pages, and doing it all without coding. And it gives you templates and widgets and layouts and design tools, and it even lets you build your own templates and even your own widgets if you really want to get into it. And it's built on the JavaScript 4.x API, which is the latest API from Esri. And it is very flexible, and we'll see that. Some of the key features that we see are really the flexibility that you have and the control that you have over how it looks. It's also a 2D and 3D savvy app. It lets you combine those into one app. And it knows how to be responsive. It has responsive design built into it. In fact, I think it was mentioned in the keynote this morning that Vermont is using it to host embedded dashboard so that the dashboard has a more responsive design. Lots of templates and more widgets, which we'll talk about. And again, the ability to customize widgets and templates to your needs. There are lots of apps that have been built with it. It's a relatively new tool that was in beta for a while, but we see all kinds of apps, whether it be 3D apps or sort of web-focused apps, galleries, or map-centric apps, these kind of things. And I want to show you, I'm going to pop out of my PowerPoint just to show you a few that that's this one, that are out there. And these are real apps. They're not like made up by Esri kind of apps. I like this one. This is Heinz Field in Pittsburgh, and it's sort of a history and a discussion about it. And you may think this is a picture, but it turns out that this is actually a 3D view of the stadium. So that's a pretty cool, just to be able to do that, I think it's kind of fun. And there's some text here alongside it. And this is actually set up, this experience, with multiple pages, right? And you can see that they put some buttons right on this first page that really just take you to these different pages. So you could see a seat map, and you can see information about one of the sections. That's pretty standard stuff. They've done something with seat revenue, and here they've embedded a dashboard inside here, right? So you can pick a section or a few sections and see them appear on the map and see the different the things about that section. This is an interesting one. This is beer distribution. So you have all these locations where there are stands to give to sell beer. And if you're really interested in like a particular brand of beer, you can see how that heat map changes as you change the different kinds of beer that you want. I think that's kind of a fun map to look at. Beer service areas. This is actually interesting because they've done like a walk time from the beer stand to the various locations. So I think that's kind of a fun one as well, like where you can get it and how long it will take you to get there. Important stuff for every day when we get to go back to stadiums. And again, you saw this already. So that's just one example. Here's a simple example of a list with some pages about eating local. It's in French. It's from France somewhere, but you get the idea that you can interact with these pages and this map. It's kind of nice. Another simple one for parking lots in Tucson. So you can click on one of these and you can see information about it, etc. Here's something from the European Environment Agency, which has many pages about climate impact, and you can see how they even put maps and other things into this experience. And again, this is multiple pages, so we'll see that as we can go through these different pages. Here's a 3D one, which is looking at COVID cases in 3D. And again, you can see I can zoom in and interact with this map, right? I can select I don't know why it zooms in so far. It's not ideal, but I can pick a state. It's going to zoom to that state, give me a sense of what that looks like. And just a nice way to present that information and build it out. So just a couple examples. Obviously, there are more, and you can find them if you just go to ArcGIS Online, for instance, and there's a filter for Experience Builder applications if you want. All right, let's jump back to the PowerPoint, and we'll continue on our quest here. There are a couple different editions of ArcGIS Experience Builder. It's available in ArcGIS Online. You can see the URL there. It's also, as if you're in the dashboard, it shows up as a part of that app chooser tile thing, that little tic-tac-toe board next to your name. When you're at the home page, it shows all the different things you have access to. And it's also available in Enterprise, starting at 10.8.1, which is the current version. Now there is also a developer edition, and you can download that and install it locally and run it locally, and you can actually build your own widgets and add other widgets to Experience Builder, just like you could with the Web App Builder Developer Edition. Same idea. You download it, you host it, you then own that hosting, and you can modify it as you want, including adding widgets. Now, in terms of licensing, it is part of the essential apps bundles. You are creating something, so you need a creator, at least a creator license to do that, or user type to do that. It says creator or GIS professional. The GIS professional includes all the creator thing. It also, GIS professional includes a pro license. So creator or up, I guess, is one way to say it. And if you don't have that access, you certainly can get a developer subscription, which gives you a one creator organization that you can play with and you know, look at that and access it in that way. So I'm going to jump into it. I want to build something for you guys or with you guys, and then I want to come back and talk about the different elements in that. So let's switch back to my browser and let me go to my organization, and I'll just show you that little tile thing which Mark showed before, and you can see all the different things that I have, and I just have to dig out in my brain where the heck Experience Builder went. Here it is. Thank you. Okay, and you can see it just takes me to that URL, and I'm going to start a new experience. You can see I have some already built. Now, it starts by asking me what template I want to use, and it could just be blank screen, but there are lots of templates, and if you're familiar with Web App Builder, you're probably familiar with some of these names that you see here, the jewelry box, the launchpad, foldable, billboard, et cetera, et cetera. And if I click on one of these, like jewelry box, or just hover, it says it's, you know, it's set really to do a list and a map. You can change all it, but that's a starting point, right? And if I look at something like general, it's a scrolling template. Some of these are page oriented and some of these are long scrolling oriented. And you can mix and match because you could have multiple pages, one that scrolls, one that's sort of fixed, whatever. But to start, these templates have that focus, either scrollable or page oriented. I'm going to start with this jewelry box. So I'm just going to create a blank template. And it throws me right in here. And just like sort of Web App Builder, it's a WYSIWYG environment. And as the template description said, it's based on a map and a list, and we can add other things to it and change things around. But, you know, I might change the title and put in a title. So I'm going to build on something around DC monuments in Washington, DC. I can move things if I want. Okay. Now, you can see that this is page oriented. It only has one page. We'll come back to adding other pages. But this is where it is. And I'll just point out that below that for this page, you see sort of a tree view or an outline view of the things on this page. So I've got a fixed panel across the top, which has an image right here. It's got a title and a subtitle, and it's got a widget controller that's holding some widgets like layers and legends and such. And then I've got a sidebar, which has two sections, a list in it and a map in it. Now, all this is sort of data driven. So let's add some data to this experience. And I'm going to come here and I'm going to search for a web map in ArcGIS Online. It's not my web map. I'm grabbing someone else's. DC Monuments. Oh, let me put it in quotes. Gives me a tighter search. I'm going to add that to my experience. And then I'm going to go to a web scene and again, search for DC Monuments. And there's a 3D version of that. So I'm going to add that as well. And you can see at the bottom, it says I got two things selected. I could also put layers directly in and or URLs that have access, and we'll see more types of things coming for that, like perhaps WFS and other things like that. But for now, I'm going to add those two layers to my project. Now, I'll just point out that there's this theme here where I could change the colors and such, but I'll come back to that. All right, so let's focus on the map now. I'm going to click on it, and you can see on the right, I have these three different tabs for this widget, this map widget. One is the content. What is it I want to see? One is how it looks, and one is actions. And if you're in Mark's dashboard session, you at least probably would have seen the idea of actions. But let's go ahead and first set the content. And what's kind of cool is I can select a map. I can actually select up to two maps. And I'll do that, my two maps here. And it may be hard to see, but there's a little square in the bottom of this map which lets me toggle between them, which is kind of cool. So I'll just show you that. I'm going to switch to a live view, which lets me interact with it, and I can switch between these maps if I want. Okay, so that's good. And I can, if I don't like the initial view, I can change its extent. And much like Mark showed in the dashboard, I can turn on different tools for the map. So I may let you change the base map, and I may let you measure, and I may put a scale bar on there, and I may let you locate yourself if you're in a mobile, you're on a mobile environment. And I could put a compass on there for the 3D so it spins, but whatever. I can choose that. I can also choose a little bit of the layout for this. So that's the content, and then you get into style, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but you can see you have a lot of tools for really tweaking the style here, and I can even change animation so that I'll do this just to show you that when you start this app, that crazy thing happens, just to give you something to look at if you don't get seasick on that one. And an action we'll come back to when we get to the list. So this is fine. This is, this is good. This lets me interact with the map, and, I can pop up, see the pop-ups and such like that. But let's now move our attention to this idea of this list. So I'm going to click on it to bring up its properties. And it's not, this list is not attached to anything yet. So I'm going to select the data for the list. Oops. Move that out of there. That just appeared. Okay. Hopefully I didn't mess anything up. What is driving this list? So I'm just going to grab a layer out of, I think it's this one. I always get this wrong. Let's see. And then I can change the arrangement of it, whether it goes across or down. I can change things about it and get out of live view so I can start editing this. And I can now change the text that is in this list. And I could type text in, but I could also grab attributes and that, or statistics, or I could build an arcade expression for what's going to go in this little line of text. But I'm just going to grab its name, and then maybe I will make it bold, and I could change the font if I wanted, all that kind of stuff. That's fine. And then you can already see what happened is it populated that list with these with the different records from that layer. And then for this this second bit of text, I'll grab this description field. I have a picture here. That's just the design of the layout. I mean, I could take it out, but I'm going to click on it and I'm going to say, okay, this picture, if you look over here on the right of the property, I want you to grab the picture from a URL, and that URL lives in an attribute called pick URL. So each feature here has an attribute that points to a URL that is a picture. And just that easily, I've populated that list with a picture, the name, the information about it. I might make it a little bit taller. It'll put scroll bars on there for me when the time comes. Now I could also tell it that I want to be able to search that list, and I got to tell it what fields I want you to be able to search on, and we'll just search on the name. So you see now a little search thing appears. Now this is all well and good, but nothing. Oh yeah, there's the spin. Maybe I should take that out. Nothing happens when I select these, so that's not very helpful yet. And so now let's get into what happens when we select it, and that's where we talk about actions, right? So action, and this again is much akin to what we see in a dashboard. We add an action. So when you select something in the list, go to the map, and I want you to zoom to the feature, and I'll give you a scale to zoom to, or you can use the default. And I also want you to, add action to the map, flash the filter maybe, or flash it. We'll flash, I think it's that layer. We'll see if that works. Okay, let's go back into live view. Okay, I'll stop that animation. But now when I select on this list, look what happens, right? We pan to it. Let me close this. Or we zoom to it, sorry, and we flash, right? And we can switch to 3D. And because these maps are linked, that happens as well, right? So that's kind of cool, the ability to do that. So very quickly, you've seen me take this and throw in an existing web map and even a scene here, build a list around it, and allow them to interact, right? Now, you might say, well, that's you're sort of being dashboardy. And I'm like, well, sort of. And we'll talk a little bit about, what makes sense when, but this is just one example of how you might use Experience Builder to build something. And I'll just point out that you can actually design things to look different based on the canvas size you have. So we're just sort of doing this in a large screen device. But if I wanted to say, well, what's it going to look like for small screens? Right, we get a sense of what that looks like, and we can even change this layout. Let me get out of live view here. I can say, for instance, take these tools. Sorry, take these tools and move them around for that if I wanted to. So, so that's kind of cool to be able to do that. In one thing that they'll be here, and then when I zoom into the other extent, or the other map real estate, screen real estate, they'll change. All right, let's come back to our PowerPoint. Let's talk a little bit about what we saw. So the building blocks of this, and we've seen a lot of this, so I didn't hit quite all of these. You start with a template. You don't have to start with a template, it could be blank. You add widgets, you choose a theme, you add data sources, and you build out those, customize those widgets to interact with the data sources. And you can extend it, of course, in developer mode. And you use the GUI builder to do all this and to bring all that together to design it. And that's really what helps us build that experience. And as I mentioned, I don't need to spend much time here, I don't think, but as I mentioned, there are these templates. Some of them are screen oriented and some of them are sort of like page oriented, and some are sort of scrolling. And you can see the different ones listed there. Now there are widgets that are focused for layouts. So you can have rows and columns, and inside each row and column, you can put other widgets. You can have a fixed panel like the page. You can have a placeholder where you just put something, a space to put something later. Sidebars we saw with the map and the list. Sections, and the ability to navigate between views and all. So there's lots of tools for laying it out, and then there are these tools that are sort of these basic widgets you might expect as part of this toolkit, whether it be a map, a list, a card, which we didn't look at, but it's sort of a informational card with data pulled from all over the place. So you can design that. Filter tools, feature info, lists. I said that. Map layers, legends, bookmarks, etc. And we'll talk about a few more of these. You see there's an embed widget where you can embed other web pages, etc. We'll talk about the survey widget in a little bit. And all these have those 3 tabs of content, style, and action. So what is it showing? How is it showing it? And if appropriate, how does it interact with other things or how does it affect other things when you interact with it? Style, size and position. You can see lots of fine-grained things for that. Animation, you see an animation here of a picture, that's the hikers, and maybe that fence post or whatever it is. But those things that are colored that say window, bookmark, etc., those are buttons. And they're rotated a little bit and they have different colors and all, and they appear in different kind of ways. So you really can get an interesting and compelling animations if you want. I know it gets tired to look at that. You can also have transitions, animation transitions between maps and between pages and all that kind of stuff. You see some other things there, borders and box shadows, etc. Those things that you're probably familiar with. But the nice thing is, unlike say Web App Builder, all these little bits of the style are exposed to you, and you can choose to tweak them if you want. And then the last thing is the idea of triggers and actions. Again, if you were in dashboard session, you saw how a list has an action that would affect a map. And we just did that as well in our example. But you can see the types of actions that are available to you and the kinds of things that that can happen to a widget when it's acted upon, when it's attached to an action. Like a map will pan or zoom or flash or filter, and a list will filter, and et cetera, et cetera. I showed you this. We added a couple data sources to our experience. We added a web map and a web scene, and you can see how you can add feature layers through an item or a URL. And you can even set or override the refresh interval for any of those things, right? So if you know the data is changing, you can set it to refresh every 30 seconds or every 5 minutes or whatever you want to do. And that, the view that we were looking at, and I'll go back to this, actually helps us see how things are connected. So you can see in this example, you've got a web map. It's got 4 layers. It's used in 4 widgets in this example. And then the layer itself, how it's connected and what it does. And, you know, it has a data view, which filters data. And here's the refresh and all that you can sort of see through navigating through the different panes in that table of contents that we saw before. Lots of ways to style it. There's some defined themes, and you can tweak colors and fonts and all that kind of stuff. And we can look at that in a little bit. And once you have something like, you could actually save it as a template if you want. So you can use our templates. You can start and design something and then save it that then you can reuse as a starting point for you and your colleagues, so that you have some consistency if you want, for instance. As I mentioned, multiple pages are, you can have multiple pages, each with a different kind of template in it. And we also have this idea of windows, like a splash screen or a confirmation or alert window. And you can pop those up at any time. You've seen me use dynamic content, the idea of the image in that list came from an attribute that was a URL, for instance. So that's an example of that as well. This is a kind of cool one. This actually allows us to embed surveys in our experience. Now we can either create a new one or we can select from an existing one. And the even cooler thing is that we can use the map or other things to drive entries into that survey. If you've done any work with Survey 123, you may know that there are ways to do this already using the URL parameters. So a survey can have a URL, of course, and at the end of that URL, you can pre-populate attributes that are part of the survey. Well, that's basically what this is doing for you. But so when you select a feature on the map, it can actually populate an attribute of a new survey record. So we'll see that. I'm going to switch to that in a minute, and we'll take a look at it. Embedding allows us to embed things in the experience through a URL. I think it was mentioned in Vermont, I said this already, that they're using the experience to Experience Builder to embed a dashboard, so it's more mobile friendly. But you can also embed other things. It doesn't have to be Esri related. It could be YouTube, or it could be whatever, anything, your company's website, whatever it might be. I didn't put a button on, but the idea of a button is that you can see here another dynamic thing, an example where a button is getting its text from, say, an attribute or an expression, or maybe it's static. And then what does it actually do? It can take you somewhere or do something interesting. So that's a button. And then ultimately you publish it. So let me just jump back because I want to show you that thing about surveys. I'm going to jump back here, and I'm not going to bother saving this, but I will go to this survey, sorry, to this experience I built. And it uses this web map. This is a web map of Vermont I made, and I found it's 2000. I don't know how fresh this data is, but these are breweries in Vermont, and I also have a survey that says, where are you? When were you there? How would you rate the food and the liquid refreshment? So let's go back to Experience Builder, and you can see there's the map, and there's a list, just like we had a list for our monuments. But what I've done is I've embedded a survey, and I'll just show you in the widgets. In the widgets, there's a survey widget, and to add a widget, you just sort of drag it onto the canvas. And I'm not going to do that because I already have it. But so I'm going to click on the survey, and I'll just show you that it's I could have picked a new one, but I picked an existing one, and I can choose whether it shows the survey header. You can maybe see that this appears beer wine location survey, description, footer, etc. But the more interesting thing is the idea of sending data to this survey. So when I interact with the map, the breweries layer, when you select a feature, the brewery name from the map layer will be put in this where are you question. And I can do multiple things if I wanted. So let me just show you how that works. Let's go into live view. And I'll just select, say, this guy here. And you see what happened. I mean, yeah, the pop-up showed up, but it just populated this for me automatically, right? And if I go here, it changes, etc. So that's kind of cool, right? And then at the bottom of this is a submit, right? And it's a typical survey. If you're willing to share your information, I'll ask that. If you say no, you won't see those questions, all that. So it's kind of a nice way to hook together something like a map and a survey into an experience. Okay, a couple more slides, and I'll take some questions if there are any, and we'll make our way to lunch. So commonly asked questions: is this going to replace Web App Builder? Well, there's no plans right now to replace it. Lots and lots of people have existing Web App Builder applications, continue to use Web App Builder because right now, anyway, it has many, many, many more widgets than Experience Builder. So basically assume that it will continue to be around because like the developer edition is on the 3x API. So eventually in X years, I don't know, when the 3x API is, if it ever is deprecated, that will, the developer edition will follow along, for instance. Can anything be transferred if you have an existing web app builder application, but transfer it to an experience? And the answer is unfortunately not. They use different underlying JavaScript API and other technologies, so you need to reconfigure or rewrite custom widgets if you're going to move them. Will Experience Builder reach functional parity of Web App Builder? Well, in many ways, certainly in the design and ability to really make it what you want, it has already sort of exceeded that. But in terms of widgets, it's not yet anywhere near the number of widgets that we see in Web App Builder. There's no Near Me widget. There's no directions. You know, there's all kinds of things that are part of the Web App Builder that aren't here yet. But the plan is to move those widgets over, not move, but to bring that functionality into widgets inside of Experience Builder, so that eventually we start moving towards functional parity. I don't know that all of them are going to make it, but the most popular ones, certainly to start, are the focus, and then we keep going, right? So keep your eye on that, and it will. You'll see more and more widgets come in, and that, you know, is a deciding factor for you, I'm sure, whether you can move to Experience Builder. If, for instance, the functionality isn't there, you're obviously not going to move. All right, so really this is the takeaway, that, you know, you have you can really create these interesting and compelling web apps. You can take your data and really create something that's more immersive. You have a lot more control over things. It's really a cool and powerful tool that we want you to start using and start exploring and take advantage of. And I know it's about 10, almost 10 of 12, so I guess I'm going to ask Mark and Krithika if any questions have come in, or that we might be able to bring to the group.
Let's see. On the Whova chat, Erica had a question about training, and there is a couple of courses that we have for Experience Builder. She specifically asked about a MOOC, and right now the only MOOC course that we've got that includes Experience Builder is one like geo-enabled apps, which is sort of a catch-all. I think it covers a lot. It covers like Web App Builder, Experience Builder, Survey 123. I mean, it's kind of a wide-ranging thing. So I'm going to have to ask our MOOC program coordinator, I think that might still be Adina, if they plan on having like one that's specific to Experience Builder.
Yeah, we might also, I haven't looked, and maybe you have, Mark, but learn.arcgis.com. I don't know if there's anything there for Experience Builder, but those are sometimes they're just videos, but a lot of times they're walkthrough lessons.
Yep. No, I think there's one in there that's like 40 minutes.
Right.
So those are great. I mean, I plugged those in the last session. And you know, there were some comments about, and I think it's paraphrasing what I said, is I can totally understand how there's like this level of head scratching about story maps versus dashboards versus Web App Builder versus Experience Builder, and
yeah,
it's a lot.
It's a lot. And I think sorry, go ahead.
No, so I was just gonna say, I think it's kind of up to A, the feature function you're looking for, and B, just making a decision on what do you think the best vehicle is to get your point across.
Yeah, and I would add to that, there's always going to be overlap. There's a good amount of overlap between a bunch of these pieces that Mark just mentioned: dashboard, story maps,
definitely,
Web App Builder, whatever. But you sort of can step back and try to think about who your audience is and what your goal is. So, for instance, we think about story maps as a narrative, right? And we think about maybe a dashboard as a way to present information. And then Experience Builder or Web App Builder is maybe sometimes, built on functionality, that you want to interact with the map or something. Although, with the scrolling Experience Builder, you sort of start going, it's sort of like a story map. But a lot of these things can be embedded in other things too. So like, for instance, if you already have a story map that you want and you want to bring it into something, or you already you want to bring an experience in, or you want to build a dashboard, or you want to bring a dashboard into an experience, you can do all those things, right? Because more and more so you see this ability to embed them in each other's things. So back to your point, Mark, that um, you can have you sort of have to think about what the best vehicle is.
Hey, Tom and Mark. This is
Sure.
Hey, Shane.
Hey, Shane.
Erica and I have been talking in the Hoover chat, and I think one of the things you touched on briefly, but is incredibly important, is being able to configure the mobile version. And
Right.
you know, having used dashboards, which are not great on mobile, but even the variety of other things, I've struggled to create something that looks the way that I want it to look on the mobile version, especially when I've used a Frankenstein approach to get the to get things looking the way I'd want. So the idea that you can then individually configure how you want things to look when it's on mobile, or have a different presentation when it's on mobile, I think is enormous. And
Yeah.
especially with the amount of mobile device use, is even if you just use Experience Builder as a container to show other things inside of that, you can configure the mobile version, I think that's enormous.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, Shane. I did touch on it very briefly, where I was looking at the large screen version and I switched to a sort of small screen mobile version. You can tweak the look and feel of things separately. So you can, within one experience, have those different UI or look and feel or organization of things based on the screen size, which is a very powerful thing. And as you said, Shane, embedding, even using it as just a container to embed for that reason alone, and Vermont is doing that for, I guess, for the COVID stuff, is a good thing. I do just before, if there are any other questions, I don't know, but I do have.
Good for you.
I do just want to point out that there's help here. There's help within the Experience Builder, which is this Show Help guide at the bottom. And also, if you hit the Help button, you'll be taken to the web help. And then the last slide I have is just this, that you can get directly to Experience here or through the app tile thing. There's a developer version. You can Google all the stuff, the help. And I don't know if this URL has changed. We just refreshed our community, or GeoNet, or whatever we call it now. So this may be old, but there is a community around Experience Builder as well. Any other questions, Mark, that came up in the last few minutes? Or
there was one they asked about the will Experience Builder support customized widgets written in R script or connected through the R bridge? So yeah, I sort of was. I really don't know.
I don't know about that.
We'll have to do some investigating.
That's an interesting question. The R bridge is really on the desktop and not part of the web environment.
Right.
So I'm not sure that makes sense, unless you've built maybe some geoprocessing tools or Python scripts that you sort of attach to a GP tool that maybe we can figure out how to run. But that's an interesting one.
Yeah, I'll have to do some research on that one.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, I think early on, if we don't get to the Q&A, we'll do our best to answer those after the session in the next, couple days. So you can always come back to Hoover and look in the Q&A session Q&A section to see if we've answered any of the questions that remain. And if there aren't any other questions, I don't know. I guess that means that it's lunchtime. So you can all grab your lunch in your kitchen or wherever you are seated. And I think, and my understanding is that's 12 to 1:30. And at 1:30 we start again with sessions, both user sessions and Esri sessions. Mark and I are doing a couple sessions this afternoon. Mark, yours is on Hub, is that right?
Yep.
And mine is on Insights. So we, love for you to join us then, but we understand we're also competing with user content. So, whatever makes sense for you. We hope, you have continue to get a lot out of the day. And I know we have a business meeting and also vendor time and also a Mappy hour. So stay tuned, and wish you all a good lunch and a good day.
Thank you very much, Tom. And I want to encourage everyone to visit the exhibitor booths and the posters during lunch if you have time. Thank you and have a great day, everyone.